All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Hopefully a few more people will jump on as we continue on. So first off, my name is Kristen Grace. I am the Marketing Communications Associate for the Ohio Environmental Council. The OEC is the most comprehensive and effective environmental advocacy group in Ohio, working to provide protect the air, land, and water for all who call Ohio home. I encourage you to follow us on our various social media outlets, including Facebook, a number of Twitter accounts, YouTube, LinkedIn, Pinterest, Flickr, and also we're recently on Instagram now. All right, so first things first, I have a poll for you. I want you to answer a question while I bring it up here. It should show up on your screen. Go ahead and take a second to answer that. I'm not seeing anyone having polled. All right, there we go. A couple people are filling it out now. All right, about 50% of you have voted. Give you a second. All right. Just give you a second for a couple more answers. All right, 64% of you, so that's pretty good. So I'll share the results. So it looks like in terms of your biggest challenge with social media, it's finding an audience and also creating content. Awesome. Those are two things that we can talk about today. So let's move on. Okay, so today we're going to go over a brief overview of social media. Because it's such a broad topic, I'm going to focus primarily on Twitter and Facebook, just because those are the two that currently are receiving the most engagement with people. So what can social media do for you? It allows you to expand your community engagement, inform your audience, and also grow the other areas of your organization. So in terms of community engagement, you want to build influence. That means becoming an expert in your subject and also becoming a community leader. You also want to improve your reputation. That means being sociable, personable online, very approachable. You want people to feel comfortable reaching out to you. And you also want to earn people's trust. Social media helps you do this because you're constantly putting out information they want or they need. And you want to make sure that information is accurate so that they trust you and know what you're showing them is correct information. It helps you also inform your audience. You can share upcoming events. If you have things coming up within the next month or so, social media is a great way to get people to show up to these events and to get the word out. It also lets you put out your news updates. Things like a press release is a great thing to put out over social media. Not only are your members on social media, but so are journalists and people that are going to see those updates, potentially contact you for stories. And you also, can show people ways to get involved. If you have job postings, a need for volunteers, people will see that on social media. It helps them to organize their calendars for the weekend, and they can figure out what they're going to be doing. All right, in terms of growing your organization, social media is great for increasing email lists, encouraging people to sign up for your e-newsletter, or just grabbing lists that you can send. Acquiring more people to contact is basically a great use of social media. It helps you to then grow your members and donors. By showing them the work that you're doing and engaging them on social media, people see you more as a trustworthy entity and are more likely to donate and become a member. It also helps you to further your cause, increase that legislative awareness, at least in our case. You send out an action alert, but if you don't have that person's email, maybe they only see that action alert through Facebook or Twitter, and that's just someone else signing on to that action alert. In terms of social media, there's a lot of things you have to remember. Here's 3 very, very important topics on that. We live in a 24-hour news cycle culture, so people expect everything you talk about on social media to be very timely. They want things coming in that day. They don't want news from a week ago. They already saw that, thought about it, and moved on. This is really important because if you aren't timely on social media, that makes people draw conclusions in and of itself. If you go to a website that hasn't been updated for months, you draw conclusions. You assume that either that organization hasn't done anything for a couple of months, or that they're not taking the time to update their website. It may be that they're too busy working on their goals and their mission, but that's not what someone visiting the website is automatically going to think. People also have very short attention spans. It's a snack-sized culture. People want bite-sized information, things that they can read in 140 characters or less, something they can see, digest, and move on from. It's also a very heavy mobile community. People are looking at their phones constantly. That's how most people check Twitter. It's just scrolling through Twitter when they're standing in line somewhere. So that's why you want to keep things short and sweet, things that people see, it grabs them. So you have to keep that mobile audience in mind. Now, a big question for a lot of people is how much time to spend on social media. That can vary depending on your organization or whether or not you have someone specifically designated to do social media or not. The way I usually do it, because I do a number of other things in addition to social media for the OEC, I designate specific social media times per day. That usually first thing when I come in the morning and throughout the day as I go along. But I set those times aside because if you don't, social media can consume the time that you spend. It can absolutely take up most of your day if you let it. But you have to make sure to log on at least once every day. You don't want to go radio silent for a week. Like I said, it's all about timeliness. You want to make sure as a bare minimum that you're checking in with the community at least once per day, if not more. Something that really helps with that is writing and scheduling posts ahead of time. There are a number of websites that allow you to do this, and I'll cover that later. But writing and scheduling posts ahead of time allows me to really cut down on the time it takes me to write a Facebook post or try to think of something that morning, what's going to go up on Twitter that day. A lot of times I'll check our calendar for events that I can be publicizing. Press releases will go out, things like that. Not always will I have something to write about ahead of time, but I usually try to have a couple of campaign messages that are ongoing that I can copy and paste and put in there. One important thing to keep in mind when you're scheduling posts ahead of time is you have to be flexible. Things change. Events happen across the world, and if you have posts scheduled to go out that are not reflecting what's happening, at times that can become a big issue for some people. During the recent tragedies in the US, there were people who got called out specifically for making what people felt were insensitive posts when really they were probably just on automated schedulers that people were just forgot they had scheduled for that day. So you have to make sure to be aware of that and to also be flexible to change what's going out that day and know what you can push for further on. All right, so Facebook is the first thing that I'm going to focus on today. Pretty much everyone has a Facebook. All age groups are on it. And it's become fairly simple to use, which is really nice. I'm assuming everyone has a personal page by now. What you might not have yet is a page for your organization. You don't want a profile for your organization. That's different. That is as if you're creating a persona for your organization. You want to create a page. A page allows you to do so much more. It also allows you to toggle between posting as yourself or as that page. So you can actually log on through your personal account, and it just kind of makes it easier so you're not logging in of one account to log into another one. This allows you to be admin on a page and do all of that from your personal account. You just have to remember who you're logged in as. All right, so the profile page or the Facebook group page for your organization is really important because it is a great opportunity for branding. Here you see we have our logo on the corner. That is the same logo that we use for all of our social media. It's a 100 by 100 image. We use it across the board. It's nice and simple. We also have a banner that we change periodically. This banner is a great space for just a fun picture like we have up right now, or for promoting a campaign. You can put things like event dates and text. You can make an image to fit that, and you can use it to say whatever you want. So that's a great opportunity. You don't want to miss out on that. But do make sure you're changing it every so often to keep people engaged and looking at it. Otherwise, they're just going to keep skipping over it. You want to include, the information about yourself so that you show up on search engines. And this is a great place to keep the events up there. We also have a box for signing up for e-news, which is our e-newsletter. So there's a lot of things that you can do with this page that you can't do elsewhere. All right, so posting to Facebook. There's a couple of important things to keep in mind when you're creating the content for Facebook or choosing what content you want to put out there. First, you want to keep things personal. That means using the first and second person, using I, we, or you should be doing things. That makes it a lot easier for people to feel connected through your posts. You also want to encourage participation. That means comments, likes, and sharing of your posts. What's really important about this is making people feel comfortable about liking or sharing your posts. I know everyone's experienced that moment where you're on Facebook and a friend posts bad news. Are you sure, should you like it in solidarity with that person, or is it weird because it's bad news? So you never want to make someone have that thought. You always want to construct your posts, even if it is bad news, write it in a way that people feel comfortable liking and sharing it. You also want a mix of updates, calls to action, asking people to participate in your action alert, or join your email list, or donate, or just check out this webpage. You also want things like finish this sentence and something else like that, or like this post if. Sometimes that can sound cheesy and grabby, but at the same time, it works, and it's been shown to work. You also want to make sure that in your mix of updates, you include interesting information, things like links to news, things that demonstrate that you are a leader in your area, that you're part of the community, that you know what's going on. And it can be your news, things when you're mentioned in the paper, things like that. You also want to use things that are emotional and provoking. Right now, the most commonly shared, reacted to, engaged with content is actually positive content. That's because of the growing demographic of middle-aged suburban moms that are now on Facebook, and they like to share positive content. But you also want things that are provoking, that are, get people angry about an issue or fired up about things like that. And you can use those to your advantage. Specifically when it comes to posting to Facebook, this is what a post looks like. Text-only updates, you want to have a variety. There's text, you can post images, pictures, links, all kinds of things. But this is a general post with some text in it. The nice thing about Facebook is they make posting links very, very easy. All you have to do is paste in the URL. You just have to make sure that the http:// is there for Facebook to recognize it. Otherwise, it just is a bunch of linkage that it won't take them anywhere. And you want to make sure that it's as easy as possible for people to get to where they need to go. When it comes to text updates, those tend to get ignored because they're not being used to the fullest extent. It's great to have only text if you're asking people to engage with you, but my rule of thumb is to always include a link. It doesn't have to be linked at the bottom because sometimes those get overlooked as well. You always want to have some sort of call to action or an engagement aspect to it. So even if you were to click the X and remove that link at the bottom, you'd still have the link in the text so that they're going somewhere. It's just a different type of post that'll get shared along with the people. But links are great because they often will pull an image from the page that you're linking to, which gives it a visual aspect. Pictures and visual is the #1 shared and engaged with thing out there. So you definitely want to have a lot of those. When you're posting pictures, and that's that photo video at the top there, you want to make sure that you're including a description that, you want to use that description space. You want to make sure that you're including a link to a page on your website or information about the campaign that you're working on. Don't just leave it blank, because when people share that image, that description goes along with it. and you don't want to put out an image without any context. Now, here's an example of some content that has been extremely successful on Facebook in the past. This is an image that the organization, I can't remember which organization it is now, but they found a quote by an organization that they were working against, and it's an awful quote. But what they did is they put it on a picture that evokes an immediate response, and it actually became one of the most engaged with, shared, liked posts on Facebook ever. And it's very simple. You can do this with, for any group or any organization, you can do something like this. It has the emotional response, it has the context, and in their description, they added a place to go to take action against these things. So they included that link to get people moving and show people how they can take action on this. Here's one of ours. This is part of our vernal pools campaign. It has the cute factor that people like. This and a number of images very similar to this had some of the highest reach that we've had of any of our Facebook posts. As you can see, it has a reference to the OEC on it, a reference to the campaign, and an image that people respond to, as well as a link at the bottom so people know where they're going. So even if the description ever gets left off, the image still is telling people where to go. In the description, we had a short description about vernal pools, as well as another link that people can easily click to get to the website to make a pledge. And these were very successful. An important part of Facebook that I think sometimes people forget is that communication is not a one-way street. You're not just putting information out there, and people are not just posting into the ether thinking someone from your organization might see it. You have to be engaging with people. That means talking to people. Sometimes this can be a tricky situation because not everyone on the internet is friendly, and not everyone on the internet agrees with you. So sometimes you have to make the decision whether or not what they've said is worth responding to, or if it's something that should be engaged with and discussed online. You want to, at all costs, avoid arguments. You don't want to put that in the public eye. If someone is really pushing you and trying to get you to react, I suggest just suggesting they call the office or email you personally to get that conversation off of the internet, because you will always look like the bad guy in that situation. Another great way to respond to, maybe they're not trying to fight with you, but they're calling you out on a situation. Respond first with thank you. Treat this like a customer service situation. Thank you for your response. Thank you for your feedback. That immediately sets a much more pleasant tone than, snapping back at them. A lot of people have experienced very negative publicity after things like that have gone wrong. So Facebook analytics, this is one of the most important aspects of social media, is analysis. You need to make sure that the time you're putting into social media is worth it. You need to be able to calculate and really show through numbers that, like I said, the time you're putting in is worth it. You'll see down here that the Facebook Insights, this is your best friend when it comes to calculating information on Facebook. It can be a little overwhelming, but you can designate a specific time period you want to look at. For us, that includes month by month. We like to look at ours that way and compare in that sense. The thing about Facebook that's great is you can put in the time span that you want, and then it'll send you, you can download a big spreadsheet of everything you could possibly want to know and more. Like I said, very overwhelming. So it's very important to pick the specific statistics that you want to look at, the numbers that you think you can draw information from. Here's a look at the first 3 months of our year, what we've been looking at, and the information that I've been pulling. Page likes, the change in that is a great thing to look at, as well as page views. I like to keep a cheat sheet on the right side so I know which of those columns on that large Facebook Insights page that I'm pulling from, because when you do it once a month, you tend to forget. And at the end of the year, I like to look at maybe graphs that I can make in Excel, real quick things that I can kind of draw conclusions from, because analytics mean nothing if you can't draw conclusions from them. You have to be able to find out what works and what doesn't work and change your strategy from there. Down at the bottom, I also like to keep track, just for myself, of the number of posts per month, how many likes, shares, and comments we get. That's a great way for me to see if, of course, more posts are going to mean more likes and shares. But sometimes some posts are just more popular than others. Like we have more likes in March than in February, but we had more posts in February, things like that. I also like to keep a spreadsheet of all of my pre-prepared content, and taking that content, and so I can go back and see, okay, well, we had more popular posts in March. What was I posting in March that people liked? I'll keep a top 10 list of the top 10 highest reach posts that I got to see what's working, and again, draw conclusions from that information. All right, so our second topic today is going to be Twitter. And I see that some of you have posted some questions. I'm going to go ahead and leave all of the questions until the end. That way I can just go through them, answer them one by one, and go down that way. So I haven't forgot about you. I will get to those. All right, so Twitter. Twitter is great, but it's very different from Facebook. Not as many of you may be engaging in it. Some of you may be. This definitely skews to a younger demographic. And it's a much quicker, more fast-paced demographic as well. The great thing about Twitter is that, again, because it's so quick, you can get information quickly and you can share information quickly. And it's also a great way to engage community. So getting started. Like I said, quick information, but you also want to be cultivating personalities. Personalities are specific Twitter accounts that people can go to, that there's a face to a name. We have, like I said, a number of personalities on Twitter, in addition to the Ohio Environmental Council specific account, which is much more general and acts kind of more as an RSS feed for the organization. That's what we're posting out, updates on the website, or press releases, or events coming up. It's a very general account, and we don't engage with specific people quite as much as some of the other accounts. The other accounts, like Jack Shaner's State House Jack, more often we have lawmakers and people like that specifically targeting him because they know the person they're talking to, and they know that he's someone that they can ask questions specifically. Journalists will follow his account in case any stories come up that he's aware of first before they are. Which they wouldn't do that on the OEC's main account. Specific ag water, OEC has a history of being very popular on water issues, so we have a specific account just for that. Our newest Twitter personality is our vernal pool guy, David Celebrezzi. He is becoming a community leader on the whole topic of vernal pools. And this has been really awesome, getting to grow this account on Twitter, because it's showing people that we have a guy just for this, and he is the expert, and he's the guy that you can contact if you have any questions about vernal pools, and that's been very successful so far. And I also encourage you to follow all of these people on Twitter. Lots of different updates all of the time. So an overview of Twitter, in case some of you are not familiar with how it works or just don't know what some of the more fine-tuned pieces of it are. You'll see the profile snapshot in the right, or the left-hand corner at the top there. That has basically, you're logged into this account. This is how many followers, how many people you're following, all that stuff. It also has a place where you can compose quick tweets. Just below that, you'll see the Twitter trends. This is what conversations are happening across all of Twitter. What is popular right now? The ultimate goal is to get your topic on that trends list. That is awesome. You'll also see on the right-hand side is the Twitter feed. This is the feed that is constantly changing. When you follow as many people as we do, this doesn't stay the same very long at all. If not even half a second, it's constantly changing. So that's why with Twitter, like I said, fast-paced. You may post one post out the other day, where on Facebook, maybe everyone will see it. They just happen to be, it shows up at the top of their newsfeed because it's relevant information to their likes. On Twitter, if they aren't on at the moment you post that, they will not see it. So that's why repetition on Twitter is not a bad thing. You can post the same tweet, maybe not 3 times in the same day, but maybe a couple of times a week. So branding, again, very important on social media. You can see we have the same logo at the top there, and we've also made the background of our information a similar logo. We have listed in our description all of our, Twitter accounts that people can also follow, and it also shows you all of our recent tweets. You can also change the background on the main page. We kind of liked the one we already had, so we haven't changed it. But if there is an event that maybe is coming up, like Lobby Day or the Green Gala, we might put something on the back and use that as an advertisement space for that event. Another great space that you can constantly be changing and updating that way. All right, so best practices with Twitter. It's very important that you be short and sweet with what you want to say. You have 140 characters for everything you want to say. That means if you want to link to something, you need a very short link. Luckily, they have websites out there that shorten links for you. I'm sure everyone's used one of these at some point. I suggest always using bit.ly links. This is the most trusted and the most retweeted, shared link out there. People are not worried about sharing these where some of the other ones they might be. Bitly is also great because it's a free service that allows you to track how many people are clicking your links. I highly suggest that everyone, if you have not yet, use Bitly, sign up for an account. It's free. You can track it. It's another thing on an app that you can use analytics for to see what's working and what people are interested in. You also want to include variety here. Like I said, repetition is okay, but you want to be repeating a whole bunch of different things. Anything from news and updates, like I said, website updates, to instructional how-tos. For example, we put out a lot of eco tips, green tips, how to live green and be eco-friendly. We also put out any kind of events that we have. So it's very similar to Facebook and the types of things that you can be posting. You also want calls to action. Interesting thing about calls to action, I have here, I'll get to calls to action in just a second. I was going to say these are the things that you can be tweeting, as I said: news, organization updates, events, instructional, and the calls to action. Here's an interesting thing about calls to action. Here's a graph I found that shows the best calls to action that you can be using. Once again, it's very important to be specific with your call to action and direct. Down at the bottom, visit, that's very passive. It works, but not as well as please retweet this or please help. So please help obviously does the best because it's a very personal, direct plea. So that's definitely something you want to translate into everything you see. But use all of these. That's the variety that you want, again, in your posts. All right, so hashtags. Hashtags are definitely something you want to be using. These allow you to not only discover conversations online, but also participate in those discussions. For example, I'll use vernal pools. If you search the hashtag vernal pool, you will see everyone on Twitter using that vernal pool hashtag to basically demonstrate that they are part of that discussion. And then when you tweet and you use that hashtag, you are then, people can find you using that hashtag and you become part of that discussion. You'll see a lot of people use that for Q&A sessions on Twitter. People will text or they will tweet a question about, say, question, hashtag vernal pools. It's a question about vernal pools. Then, someone will tweet back an answer for hashtag vernal pools. So what community is being discussed. And that's a great way to discover people who are also, engaging and interested in the same things that you want to be engaging in. You can find community leaders in other areas that can be of assistance to you. Some things about hashtags though, like I said, you want to be specific. And in this case, less is more. One hashtag clean air is better than a whole slew of other hashtags. I know you're trying to cover your bases if you're doing this, but it looks cheesy. It takes up valuable space that you could be using to say more. And it just frustrates people because they search for air or they search for breath when what you're tweeting has nothing to do with that actual hashtag. You're just trying to get everyone to see it. All right, so this is a tweet. This is probably pretty basic for a lot of people, but it's always good to look at it. This is if you were to go to an actual, the specific link for a specific tweet. This is what comes up. You can see 2 hashtags we use there. That's fine because they are related. The nice thing also about hashtags I will mention is they're great for using campaigns. For example, the Clean Energy Ohio or Ohio Clean Energy campaign that we're launching right now. That's how we know people are engaging in that specific campaign, is because they're using that hashtag. Earth Month is the same way. Green Living, this is specifically an Earth Month tweet. And so that's how people can keep track of that. This one here, this one has 1 retweet. You can see it also shows you favorites, things like that. And you can also reply right here, which is really nice. How often should you tweet? You want to be tweeting at least 2 to 3 times per day. I've identified mid-morning, lunchtime, and early evening is the best times for people to see it and to retweet it. For some reason, retweets seem much heavier at the end of the day, but you get a lot of reach at the earlier hours of the day too. Again, 2 to 3 times per day is minimum. I suggest more, just because the more you're putting information out there, the more likely people are checking and going to see it. So that's just something to keep in mind. Another thing about Twitter that is wonderful that I think everyone should be using is lists. Lists are huge because they allow you to organize your followers in a way that is actually beneficial. The way a lot of big Twitter accounts like ours work is if someone follows us, we follow right back. That's just a common courtesy on Twitter. And it's a great way to keep engaging in communities and making more friends that way. But like I said, that feed that we're looking at is essentially useless to us because we're following so many people that not all of their information is relevant. So I will make specific lists that are better for me to follow, that help me find information about nonprofits or specific Ohio politics and things like that. Some suggestions about ways to organize your followers or who you're following. The press and the media, so that you can tweet something specifically at them. They're much easier to find that way. You can do it by geographic area. So if you need to do something specifically for people in the Franklin County area, you have a list of who those people are already. Other nonprofits, if you need to reach out for partnerships, staff and board members to make sure they're retweeting you or you're retweeting them. And it's also a great way to reach out to donors. Maybe major gift donors and things like that who are on Facebook that you want to be engaging with. Businesses are also another great group to be following. So Twitter analysis. Twitter doesn't provide its own analytics. You don't really have to, or they don't really have to, because, how many things are you really looking at? We use Crowd Booster. This was a free service that has recently gone paid. I like it because, similar to Hootsuite, it allows me to schedule tweets ahead of time, and it also gives me some nice upfront, colorful visual analytics that I really, really like. Some other things you can use, as I mentioned, Hootsuite and TweetDeck are great alternatives, but really, when in doubt, just use Google. There are a million options out there that you can be using, and there's new ones popping up every day with newer and greater options. There are things to look at. This is a snapshot of our last year on Twitter, just a couple of the analytics that we look at. I like to look at, total followers is ultimately your most important numbers. I like to look at the change. Why was October so much better than November and December? And then I'll go back and I can look at what I had prepared the month. As I said, I keep a spreadsheet of everything that I post every day. Even if I don't prepare it ahead of time, after I write it, I will put it into that, just so I can look back and see what I was posting at that time. I like to keep track of how many tweets I put out. Obviously, December was probably a lower month because I tweeted a little bit less that month. So those are things that kind of help me see what's going on there. And I also like to look at the percentage increase. So we increased 14% since December the previous year. So that's like a nice information to include in a report. And again, the most important thing to be able to do with analytics is to draw conclusions. Obviously, more tweets probably means more followers. So I just need to tweet more, and then I can look at more specifics about what I should be tweeting about more of. Here's an example of the top 10 that I've been pulling. This allows me to see, what's getting the most reach, what's more retweets means more reach. And that lets me see, what people are more interested in, what people like, which hashtags are working, which hashtags people are engaging in versus which ones people aren't. So really what you need to know here is that social media is a vast landscape. There is a lot to talk about. Obviously, I covered a very brief amount today. I may get more specific in the future. But it's important to remember that social media requires a lot of planning. You need to approach social media with goals in mind. You have to know what you want when you're posting. Do you want people to give you money? Do you want people to attend an event? Do you just want people to know that you're there? Having goals for everything you post is really what's going to help you get the most out of it. Just throwing information out there to see what happens is great to start with, but eventually you need to narrow down and decide what you're going to do. This can be done, first off, you want to create a policy if you don't have one already for engaging with people online, especially when you have the instances of people being rude or unfriendly. You want to know how to deal with that before it happens. Maybe create some examples that people might say and then come up with ways to respond to that. You also want to have campaigns planned. Campaigns can be as simple as Earth Month. So how are you going to get people involved with Earth Month? We did Earth Month tips, and we wanted the tips to engage people. Our goal was to get people talking with us. So to do that, after every Earth tip, we included a question. How are you using this tip? Or do you have tips to share as well? Things like that. And that really increased the engagement that we had. You also want to, write these down, create these campaigns, have a goal in mind, but also then coordinate with the other members of your organization so that they know what's going on. Social media can't exist in a vacuum. Everyone has to know what's being put out there at all times. So that's really important as well. And like I said, it's a very, very broad topic. There's a lot going on, and there's a lot of things that can be discussed, and a lot of things can just be found through, Google asking questions. So that's what I had today, and I encourage you to please ask questions. I know we had a couple that were already in here. So let's see. I'll give you guys an opportunity. It looks like these aren't actually questions, but just some wonderful supporters. I'll give you guys a chance. If you have any questions, please type them in the question or the chat box now about anything we covered today. I know I didn't get a chance to talk very much about finding and attracting the right audiences. In terms of audience, I know that Facebook is definitely skewing older now. That's post-college, so, as I said, middle-aged moms, and even grandparents are now going on there. For the OEC, our audience has primarily been older donors, so Facebook has been a huge, huge thing for us recently because that just happens to be where a lot of our audience is. Google Plus, not many people are on that. It tends to be in the tween age group now, middle school, early high school. I think that may be because the kids don't want to be on Facebook anymore because their parents are on it, and things like that. LinkedIn has maintained a very professional specific lean. That's very much the company specific, so events, news updates, things like that seem to be the best things for there. Here's a question. What do you use to determine effective hashtag lists? That has been a lot of trial and error. Searching for things like clean air versus just air. Using the search function on Twitter, as I said, and just keeping spreadsheets of how many people are engaging with it, numbers, things like that. I haven't done a lot of that, I will admit. It's been mostly, as I said, trial and error, and when the fancy I'm sparked to do it. We did spend some time looking into what the best hashtags would be for specific campaigns. Earth Month was an easy one, but I know Clean Energy Ohio or Ohio Clean Energy, we had to decide which one of those to use. And that was a matter of, one, which one's already in use. If there's one that's already being used a lot, go ahead and use that one unless you want it to be very specific. So campaign ones can be specific, or if you're just trying to engage a community that already exists, go ahead and use the ones that are already popular. Use that, maybe add a second hashtag to divert it in your direction. But again, 2 hashtags may not be your best bet. if you're trying to constantly engage the same community, because people are more likely to use one hashtag than two. So, are there any other questions? Got a couple of more minutes here, so I'll give you a couple of seconds to throw any questions out there. I encourage you to check out any of our upcoming webinars. We have some air quality webinars that are coming up, as well as fracking. And we're always having ones pop up here and there about current Ohio legislative issues as well. And also follow us on all of our social media. As I said, that ask, it always sounds cheesy, but it works. Ask people to follow you on Twitter or friend you on Facebook. So are there any more questions? All right, well, that looks like that's all the questions we have. If you guys have any more questions at all, feel free to tweet me at Ohio Enviro, or email me at kgrace@theoec.org, and I will be available to answer any of those questions. Thank you for joining me today. I had a lot of fun doing this. It was my first webinar ever, so hopefully it wasn't too shaky. Again, contact me if you have any questions, and have a great day. Good luck with your social media.